contests that you're gonna go through? I'm curious in this protocol.
Yeah.
Oh, rebasing. Okay, interesting. Let me mute my mic for a second.
All right, yeah, I see it.
Okay, y'all got it up. I'm just getting this second screen set up, and then we can hop right in, and I can take you through all my all of my thought process. So we got here. Let's move this over. Don't switch. All right, fellas, can y'all still hear my voice and everything?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, so we got that. Now let us. Let's pull this up. All right, and so you shared the derby in there. Okay, so um, hey everyone, welcome to Solidity ATL Study Hall Session 2. In today's session, we're going to cover a little bit about a prior contest that I had participated in, kind of go through my thought process around how I evaluated the code, and then how I came up with a finding, and then also how I drafted the finding for it to have gotten selected for the best finding out of all the other auditors. So I'll go through that process. I'll also talk about escalations that I submitted and that sadly got rejected. And so I kind of just go through that whole process of that contest. All right, you guys are free to come off mute and chat now. I just wanted to give that announcement for anybody who comes to watch this video later. But
Cool. Are you said you're streaming on YouTube? So that's where the video is.
yeah, I'm streaming on YouTube, and then I'm also gonna share it here too. Share screen. All right, can you see everything here?
Mm.
Can you see my screen now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, turn that off. Okay. I wonder. Actually, I can pull up my notes too. That probably would be beneficial as well as like actually seeing what I was thinking at that point in time. Um, okay, Derby. There we go. All right. So first things first is before I do any protocol audit, I like to do a certain setup. So I'll have a quick repo that I'll create that has issues and a README. This should have been the other way around, but essentially my README is just going to be all the notes that I take at the time and all of the call stacks I go through, and then the issues will usually contain my actual findings. So I'll have everything constructed locally before I submit it. And like for instance, you can see this false positive now, where I have a drafted finding and figured out that it was not a valid thing. Um, and this is the one that ended up being the the finding that got selected by the judges that allowed me to get that bounding in place in that contest. So what we did is we had this protocol called Derby Finance. Um, it was a very interesting protocol from the start. I think where if we have yeah. So kind of looking at some of these contracts, it had a lot of interesting things. It had like DeFi. It had cross-chain functionality. There was external dependencies using these like cross chain bridges, which was sending messages from one chain to another. And the idea is it's like a self-balancing trading protocol. So, like, let's say I make a trade on Ethereum and then I jump over into my Arbitrum account. Um, Everything will be balanced and everything will be able to communicate cross chain to let you know like the progress of your account and the whole nine. So that's essentially the high level of what Derby was. Um, and honestly, I didn't spend too much time on these. Like when you have a full time job and you try to do audit contests, you have to learn how to manage your time wisely. So the main thing for me was to get a good understanding of what the heck Derby was, what they did, and then second was to jump straight into the code. So before we jump in, any questions on like just that first piece of how I approached this audit? Cool. Cool.
Like links to code bases. So how do you know which one to pick first, or do you just start at the top?
Nice. Yeah. So typically, what I do is, so first off, let me also go to the code. Where does it allow us to do that? Maybe I don't know if it's still up. Yeah, they took it down. But essentially, you have a link that takes you to all the contracts, and I clone that down. And how do I know where to start? Is I kind of just take a skim over the names. So um, if you're familiar with the interfaces piece, like interfaces are helpful in calling contracts, but it's not where a lot of the main functionality is. So my brain instantly puts this in like the bottom percentile of what I need to audit. Um, and then I kind of just look at the name. So main vault, that kind of already told me that is the main one of the main areas I want to focus. So I knew to focus in on this one. We had controller. I definitely put that high on the list because it's controlling something. We had Derby token that was high because that's the name of the protocol is Derby. So I was like, okay, they have a custom token. Game that was high on the list. And then we have all these different providers, which I saw that it's connecting with different DeFi protocols. So that didn't go too high on the list. That just looked like more of a dependency. And then um, as we went down the list, I kind of just took the names and figured out, okay, what order would I want to put it in. So that's kind of how I visually like approach an audit is kind of just see what's going to be the most important, where should I spend most of my time, and I make a preliminary like I don't honestly don't even make a schedule. I just in my head I know which pieces I want to attack. With main vault definitely being like number one in my head. And then what I usually do is I go and look at the documentation. Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I go look at the documentation and I start reading through this and I cross reference and say, okay, out of what I just read, what is the most important things that I need to look at? And I'm gonna share some alpha with y'all right now. Honestly, if it's a public, if it's a public contest, right? Um, and I'm not saying a private audit. Like I want to be clear that this. I don't do this for any private audits or any deals I do with my firm. Anything that's a public bounty where all the information is posted online, I sometimes use ChatGPT to assist me with the audit. So one cool thing you could do is say I have an auditing assistant, and I might say, "Hey, auditing assistant," or what was this? Yep. Let me pull. So this is one of the ones I had before. So assistant, can you give me a breakdown of this protocol using their docs? Bam. And this has been like super gold, and for me to like understand really quickly how an audit takes, like a protocol does their stuff. Sometimes I will use it, sometimes I don't. Like this just depends on the time. Like if I have a week, like for instance, me and Robert will do a audit together. If I have time, I don't do this because ChatGPT will give you some random stuff and it will really mess up. Like these bottom two may be completely wrong, right? But it does a good job at trying. So if I have some time, I will not use this. But if I don't have time, I'll easily throw in like, hey, do a recap of this for me. So what I did was I did that and kind of took a look at, okay, what's the most important pieces, and realized that let's attack it from kind of the order I showed you: main vault, yada yada yada, the whole nine, right? And so let us jump into some of the code. So this is some of their code right here. And essentially I just started from those contracts that I said were important. So we have main vault right here. And yeah, I just take it from the top. I start reading through it, start trying to get an understanding of what things are. I start trying to connect the things I've read in documentation. And on my first pass, what I'll do is I will use these Solidity Visual Developer, or you can just use the comments. And I just start placing comments of areas where it just seems a little interesting. So for instance, I said, check and see if I can call this first and then call withdraw when there's enough funds. I don't know, whatever I was trying to get at, but essentially, oh, I know what I was trying to do. So there's a withdraw and then there's a withdrawal request, right? The withdrawal allows you to withdraw some money, and then for withdrawal request, if you don't have enough money, or if you don't have enough money to withdraw, you can do a withdrawal request. So I was trying to see if can I just do withdrawal request and see if I can maybe get some tokens, right? Like if they just completely didn't block, like did not check if I actually had the tokens to be able to make this withdrawal request. So stuff like that. I'll put different audit tags in there and just kind of tell me where I may see a potential attack vector. And so I do that. I go through the code. I follow these call traces. So like, let's go back to withdraw request. If I see something and there's a function inside of it, I won't continue reading the code. I will actually make sure I follow through this whole call stack. It's like, okay, burn was called inside of there. What's called inside of the burn? I'll follow that. I'll see what's happening, right? And that's essentially what I do. If I have 2 hours, I will go and just do that. And as I'm going through different functions and checking through the call stack, if I see something funny, like down here, I'm like, okay, let's see if I can play with this. I may jump into here and go from there. So that's essentially like how I audit my process. I work from what's important, and then I attack the logic. I just read through it and try to attack the logic. Before I continue, any questions on my flow, on my methodology?
That's pretty solid.
Thank you.
So
And if,
I guess one thing.
Mhm.
Were you also at this point already? Because it's like I saw they have ERC 20 and 721 and like all the different NFTs. Were you thinking about those as well when you were looking at this? It's like,
Yeah, good. That's a really good point.
yeah,
So at the beginning, I actually should have covered this. This is actually one of the most important things. Thanks, Robert.
of
um,
course.
at the beginning of an audit, and some auditors don't do this, you really, really, really have to read the documentation that the bounty contest or whatever puts in place, because they will tell you if there are areas of the code that they want you to focus on, there are tokens you should be thinking about, the whole nine. So, yes, Robert, you're right. I read through this right here and I knew which tokens to expect. And I automatically threat modeled in my head, like, I know USDT has an issue with the return values. It's completely different from all the other ERC20 tokens. So I in my head make sure that whenever I stumble upon a token transfer, does it take care of does it take care of those